Joining us now is a great American and a great statesman, former Senator Mike Gravel of Alaska, one of the leaders against the last illegal and immoral war this country had, and he is now finding himself in that same leadership role again. Senator Mike Gravel, it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we have spoken, you and I have spoken before,
right.
And your campaign has really started to take off since we spoke. It's been an opportunity for the American people to get to know you again. A lot of people who hadn't seen you on the national stage since the days of the Pentagon Papers.
Right.
Days,
25,
70s,
a generation.
A generation ago. And now they're hearing you, and they're hearing the same passion and the same intensity of focus on trying to end an unjust and illegal war and to trying to change this country. My threshold question is, what does that feel like to have to go through that once every generation? It must be both interesting and frustrating.
You're quite right. In fact, when I was asked one question, well, you know, if we get out of Iraq, it's an admission that our soldiers died in vain. Well, and I added to that, our soldiers died in vain in Vietnam. Stop and think. We got a Baskin Robbins in Hanoi right today, and what has changed? We're trading with them. But as a result of the Vietnam War, we killed over 3 million Southeast Asians, 58,000 Americans. And now what we do is we go into Iraq, commit the same mistake again, only worse, because now this was an outright lie and a fraud committed by a president, sustained by the Republicans and the Democrats in the Congress. And you stop and think, 55 million Americans opposed this war right when they were doing it. That means that 55 million Americans had more common sense than did the majority of the people in the Congress of the United States.
And that's a very different thing. Let's try and remind people of the difference between the opposition to this war and the opposition to the war in Vietnam. The opposition to the war in Vietnam took a while to grow, took time for people to begin to question whether or not the government would lie to them. And as it grew, it became opposition that grew both among Democrats and Republicans. Somehow, this opposition has been intensely politicized. We're seeing it even now. 3/4 of the Republicans, rank and file, still polled support this president and support this war. That's astonishing that it hasn't become bipartisan opposition. What's the difference now?
Well, the problem is partisanship has increased, and that's what it is. And I think the kindest thing you can say about them is they're morally tone deaf. As you and I are speaking, Americans are dying. People in Iraq are dying to no purpose. The people of Iraq want the United States of America to leave, to get out.
Well,
now,
all the polls show that the Iraqis, including their own leadership, their own parliament, has expressed that.
They want us out. Now,
right.
Why is it we insist on staying there? On some phony argument? Well, obviously, it's the reason why we went to war. We want to control the oil.
Yeah.
And that is wrong. The one drop of oil is not worth one drop of American blood.
It's actually a benchmark, as someone pointed out earlier today. It is a benchmark for the success of our efforts that we will have portioned the oil to these 4 multinational oil companies. That is a measure, and they actually put it out there honestly.
No question.
Saying that we will have succeeded in Iraq if these companies have the oil.
But you can't succeed, you can see, because what happens is that's when they talk about Hillary and the others were going to take the troops and put them over the horizon. That means you put them over the horizon and you're ready to strike back if they don't follow the contract that we imposed on them for oil. That's colonialism. That is colonialism, and we're fighting a colonial war in a post-colonial period, and that will not wash in the world. That will not be accepted. And so we're on a fool's errand in that regard. What we need to do is get out. Now people say, "Oh, we won't control the oil." Well, who will control the oil? I don't care. They're not going to drink it. They're going to sell it in the world marketplace.
American security is not connected to oil, even though we may make it such, and frankly, we are more vulnerable by relying on it.
I was just going to make that point. Our security is diminished the longer we stay in Iraq. And not only that, our security is diminished the more we continue what we've been doing for the last 50 years, is letting the military-industrial complex control our government lock, stock, and barrel, and militarize our culture.
Let me ask you, having heard this exchange, what's it like for you? Because you're clearly In some respects, you're the skunk at the garden party. You're the Democrat saying to other Democrats, you people are not standing up for the Democratic Party and the principles of the party. What's that like for you? I mean, let me ask, when the cameras are off, what kind of interaction do you have with your fellow candidates?
I try to avoid interaction, to tell you the truth, because it's a little embarrassing. I had the same situation when I was in the Senate, when I would filibuster and make other senators uncomfortable. It is. But you see, the job is not to go up there and be friendly, and we're all...
It's not a popularity contest.
That's exactly right, but they all treat it as one. They don't want to disturb the other person. They're talking about this is the cathedral of power, and you use power to change things, and they don't want to use power if it's not a comfortable exercise thereof. And that's what's wrong. And so when you ask, how do I feel? I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy that. I enjoy the contest if I was able to deal with ideas. But you can't deal with ideas. I can't talk to Hillary directly. I can't talk to Barack Obama directly. What we've got is this little beauty contest that the networks have put together, and they're not even fair. I got 5 minutes out of 2 hours, 4 minutes out of an hour and a half.
They actually kept a clock, and that's right.
Oh,
in
yeah.
both cases,
it was gross. It's totally gross. And of course, then here's what you hear. Well, but these are the top-tier candidates. Well, what's the criteria for top tier? They got the most money. They're raising $25 million, $30 million in 3 months. Well, what that here? And then you go to another news program and they'll say, oh, the corrupting element in our system of government is money. And so here we are then measuring these people by the money, which is another way of saying we're measuring how corrupt they've become in order to make them president.
Senator, at the risk of corrupting you, I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell people how they can support your campaign. There's a website, isn't there?
There is, and it's gravel2008.us, and our average contribution is about $70. Sometimes we'll get a couple hundred, sometimes 1,000. And then I got 2 contributions. The first one in my whole campaign was $1 from an artist in Greenwich Village, and not a month ago I was opening the mail and there was a check for $1. I got to tell you, it's I don't know if you're aware of widow's mite in the Bible.
No.
What it is you see the Pharisee up front in the front row, his robes, obviously very wealthy, and he gives a lot of money to the temple, and then you see the little old lady at the back of the temple or the church, and she's got a small coin, and she gives that little coin. That's all she can afford. It's probably half of her net worth, and he gives a fraction of his net worth, and that's widow's mite. It's the power of that person, because it's not how much you give, it's what you give, and it's what your commitment is when you give.